SOCE Review, Chapter 1, Unit 1, Lesson 1, the roles of a law enforcement officer. Each day, law enforcement officers focus on helping people in the communities they serve, maintaining civil order and enforcing laws. Law enforcement is a service-oriented profession. As a law enforcement officer, you are also responsible for protecting the public. To accomplish all these tasks, an officer should be service-oriented, dependable, a communicator, a problem solver, and a multitasker. Determining your role. You have 3 roles, the first being a supporter. This is the role you should adopt automatically when interacting with your community. As a supporter, you will help people who are grieving, hurt, or experiencing personal tragedy. All of these situations require you to be compassionate and reassuring. A stabilizer is the second role. When critical incidents occur, you will need to display confidence to calm those around you. Maintaining your composure and displaying self-assurance in your capabilities are important to this role. Enforcer is the third role. This role represents duties that are typically associated with a law enforcement officer. Making arrests and maintaining order by giving lawful commands when deemed necessary are just a few examples when the enforcer role is appropriate. Make sure to be assertive and give orders. And do note that the majority of your time will be spent as the supporter and the stabilizer, not the enforcer. Now I'm going to give you an example where it ties all 3 of them together. If you are responding to a sexual battery case, initially you might need to stabilize the situation to preserve evidence and keep the victim and their family or friends calm. While stabilizing the scene is critical, it is also important you act as a supporter when talking to the victim and asking them questions. This puts the victims more at ease and helps secure their cooperation during the investigation. However, if circumstances change and the suspect is on scene or the victim's family wants to take the situation into their own hands, you may need to take on the role of the enforcer. Make sure you note that emotional intelligence has the ability to identify and cope with their own emotions while also doing the same for the people around them. Emotional intelligence does not mean you suppress your emotions or the emotions of others. It means you know how to recognize them, cope with them, and even view them as assets to your professional life. Know what the Criminal Justice Standards and Training Commission is. It oversees the certification, employment, training, maintenance of officer records, and conduct of all criminal justice officers in Florida. It seeks to ensure that qualified, well-trained, competent, and ethical criminal justice officers serve the residents and visitors in Florida. The Florida statutes appoint the Criminal Justice Professionalism Division with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to support and assist the work of the CJSDC. Training requirements. To become a law enforcement officer, you have to follow a training and certification process. The Florida statutes and the rules within the Florida Administrative Code, the FAC, provide the requirements and standards for the process. So just remember that you have to follow a training certification process, and the Florida Administrative Code provides the requirements and standards for this process. To complete the basic recruit training program, recruits must pass within 80% on each of the end-of-course exams, proficiency in DUI traffic stops, proficiency in high liability courses, and participate in physical fitness. After completing the basic recruit training program, you must pass the SOCE, which is State Officer Certification Exam, within 3 attempts. If you do not pass the SOCE within 3 attempts, you have to retake the entire basic recruit training. To become a certified sworn law enforcement officer, you must complete the following: meet all minimum requirements and standards, complete the approved basic recruit training, pass the SOCE, be actively employed with a law enforcement agency in a full-time, part-time, or auxiliary sworn officer position. You have 4 years from the starting date of your basic recruit training to complete the certification process, not from the date when you pass your SOCE. Do know that the CJSDC may also act against an officer certification if an officer does any of the following. There's a large list here. I'm going to give you some of the big ones. Pleads nolo contendere, or pleads guilty to, or is found guilty of any felony. That word means you do not accept or deny responsibility for the charges. Fails to maintain a good moral character as defined by the Florida statutes. Commits any felony offense. Misuses your official position. Has unprofessional relationship with inmates, detainee, probation, or parolee, or community controllee. Subverts or attempts to subvert the CJSDC approved training examination process or an employing agency's promotional examination process. The CJSDC may discipline an officer who commits any of the above violations. These penalties also include a written reprimand, probation for up to 2 years, with or without mandatory retraining or counseling, suspension of up to 2 years, or revocation of certification. Those are the 4 penalties you can get. Under Florida law, the CJSDC must revoke your certification if you are convicted of, plead guilty, or nolo contendere, or found guilty of any felony offense, even for withholding of adjudication or suspension of one sentence. When the CGSDC revokes an officer's certification, the officer can no longer work as a certified officer in the state of Florida. While these guidelines are specific to sworn officers, the CGSDC and the Academy will expect you to adhere to the same standards of conduct during basic recruit training. Violating them may result in the denial of your officer certification. The structure of the criminal justice system. The system of criminal justice involves the maintenance and enforcement of criminal laws and includes the structures, functions, and decision-making processes of the agencies that deal with the management and control of crime and criminal offenses. There are three main components. You have law enforcement, the court system, and corrections. Law enforcement agencies. The United States has 4 levels of law enforcement agencies: local or city, county, state, and federal. Know that county jails, these are facilities where arrestees go through the booking procedures. Then you have juvenile assessment detention centers, prisons, which are federal and state, probation, and parole. Probation, remember, is a sentence placing a person under the supervision of a probation officer for a specific length of time instead of confinement. So you do probation instead of jail time, where parole is release from inmate from a correctional institution for whatever reason. So probation is before jail, parole is release from jail. Then we move on to a list of people moving through the system. So you start with person of interest. You move down to potential witness, subject, victims. Then when you locate the subject, you go from suspect to detainee, arrestee, defendant, and then offender. We'll start with complainant. A complainant is a person who reports a crime or alleges that a crime has been committed. A witness is any person who has information about some element of the crime. A victim is a person or entity that suffers an injury as a result of a crime. A confidential source is a person who provides information in confidence about a crime. A person of interest is someone involved in a criminal investigation who has not been arrested or formally accused of a crime. A subject is a known person accused or suspected of committing a crime. A suspect detainee is the person believed to have committed the crime. So real quick, the difference between subject and suspect. Remember again, a subject is a known person accused or suspected, or a suspect or detainee is the person believed to have committed the crime. So the difference between subject being known and the suspect being believed. An arrestee is a person who is under arrest or has been arrested. A defendant is a person formally accused of committing a crime in a court proceeding. And an offender is a person convicted of that crime. Then move on to chain of command, which is the order of authority within an organization. Vertical communication is a term for information from the agency head that flows down through the supervision levels. So vertical communication starts at the top, whether it's the sheriff or the chief, and then moves down. Then you have lateral communication. This is across a level of organization to employees on the same level chain of command. So maybe it goes to all officers or all deputies. And then if it's specifically for sergeants, it goes to sergeants. So sergeant to sergeant would be lateral. Chief to lieutenant could be vertical. Delegation of authority. Whether it is the chief of police, the sheriff, or the agency director, the consequence of everything that happens within the organization ultimately rests on one person. So it doesn't rest on everybody, it rests on one person. When a person with authority grants decision-making authority to another person, it is called delegation of authority. Knowing who has the authority to make decisions and who has the responsibility for the follow-through is the foundation of an effective organization. Procedural justice. Procedural justice is an approach that focuses on carrying out justice in a fair and equitable manner. The 4 pillars compose the procedural justice approach. You have fairness and consistency of rule application, voice and representation in the process, transparency and openness of the process, and impartiality and unbiased decision-making. So the 4 are fairness and consistency, voice and representation, transparency and openness, and impartiality and unbiased decision-making. Fairness is the perception of fairness is not just about outcomes. Be consistent in your decision-making and treat people with respect. Voice and representation involves groups and the decisions that affect them and listen to their concerns. Transparency, decisions are made without secrets and deception. And impartiality, decisions are based on relevance and data. Then we move on to the LEAD framework. The LEAD framework is listen, explain, equity, and dignity. And remember, to practice procedural justice in your daily police work, it helps to remember the LEAD framework. So the LEAD framework helps with procedural justice. So listen, give everyone you interact with a chance to tell their side of the story. Explain, always explain your actions. Equity, make fair decisions. And dignity, treat people with respect. Every single encounter you have with the public is a chance to shape how they feel about law enforcement officers. Police legitimacy happens when the community views law enforcement as fair, morally obligated to administer the law, and a legitimate authority of power. Then we move on here to ethics. Ethics are standards of conduct based on the principles of right and wrong defined by society. Ethics indicate how a person should behave, where laws and rules are derived from ethics. So just remember that ethics are morals that are based on what society thinks is right and wrong. They indicate how you should behave, and laws and rules are derived from those ethics. You have a duty to intervene if you see another officer or officers committing an offense, treating a community member with disrespect, or engaging in any behavior that would not be deemed ethical. The Law Enforcement Code of Ethics provides specific principles for law enforcement officers to follow. The Law Enforcement Oath of Honor gives officers a shorter version of these ethical values. So remember, the full version is the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics. The shortened version is the Oath of Honor. Then we move on to unethical behavior. Bribery occurs when you accept something for your benefit that influences your professional conduct or decision-making. Perjury is the offense of lying in court after taking an oath. So bribery, you accept something for your benefit that influences how you behave. Perjury is the offense of lying in court after taking an oath. A conflict of interest is a situation on or off duty in which an officer is in a position to personally benefit from actions or decisions made in their official capacity. And then you have misuse of your position. Never misuse the authority entrusted to you as a law enforcement officer. The Florida statutes prohibit misuse of your position as a public employee. Examples of misusing your position may include having a family member's traffic ticket dismissed, using your badge to gain unauthorized entry to a concert, or wearing your uniform for the sole purpose of obtaining a discount at a local restaurant. A gratuity is anything of value intended to benefit the giver more than the receiver. Move on to harassment. A hostile work environment is a workplace that is difficult or uncomfortable to work in because of a harasser's behavior. Quid pro quo is a Latin phrase that means something for someone, for something. Sexual harassment is unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature. Sexual harassment includes verbal and nonverbal behavior, as well as physical actions. The victim may file a complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which is EEOC, and consult with an attorney. The EEOC is a governmental agency that enforces compliance with the Civil Rights Act, Title VII. So again, if the victim's going to file a complaint for harassment, it would be with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC. Fair and unbiased policing. Bias is the unfair treatment and attitude towards a group of people and is considered unethical behavior. So if you're ever coming up to bias versus unbiased, just remember B is bad, so we'll go with bias is bad, where unbiased is good. Bias is the unfair treatment and attitude towards a group of people and is considered unethical behavior. Unbiased policing, also known as fair and impartial policing, is the equal treatment of any person you stop, question, search, detain, or arrest, regardless of the person's race, ethnicity, religion, gender presentation, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, national origin, homeless status, mental or physical disability, age, or other self-defining characteristic. When you practice unbiased policing, you must make decisions based on evidence and data rather than emotions and predetermined ideas of a person. So remember that unbiased policing is also known as fair and impartial policing. So unbiased policing is good. Explicit bias is a person with explicit bias is aware of their dislike of certain groups of people and might be openly hateful and biased in their decision. Implicit bias is the unconscious beliefs we have about groups of people. So again, implicit is in your brain, you don't realize it, where explicit is you're going out of your way to dislike and show your dislike for groups of people. So now we come up to stereotype, prejudice, and discrimination. So stereotype is an idea. Prejudice is the feeling you have based on that idea. And then discrimination is that action you take on that idea and feeling. So for example, a stereotype would be people with blue eyes are bad people. Prejudice would be like, I don't like those people with blue eyes. Discrimination is, I don't want to be friends with anyone who has blue eyes, or I treat them differently because of that. Stereotyping is judging a group of people who are different from you based on your own or others' opinions. Prejudice is the unjustified and baseless attitude towards a person only because of their membership into a social group. And discrimination occurs when people choose to act. So again, stereotype is kind of an idea or an opinion. Prejudice is your attitude, and discrimination is acting on those prejudices. The 14th Amendment guarantees every person within the United States equal protection under the law. In Mapp v. Ohio, the U.S. Supreme Court declared that no state can limit this constitutional right. Every person is entitled to be treated the same under similar circumstances. All right, then we move to stress and officer wellness. What is stress? Stress includes the physical or emotional reactions to an event or situation. Stress may come from a perceived or a real threat. Not all stress, however, is negative. The fight, flight, freeze response consists of flight, the body prepares to fight, the body prepares to face the danger head-on. Flight, the body prepares to get away from a dangerous situation. And freeze, the body fails to act. Categories of stress. There are 3 categories of stress: routine stress, acute stress, and traumatic stress. Routine stress happens on a daily basis in a normal part of life. So balancing home and work, taking care of day-to-day tasks. Acute stress is often short-lived and occurs when you experience unexpected changes in your life, such as the end of a relationship, death of a family member, or sudden unemployment. So just remember, acute is very short. Traumatic stress occurs during major events like war, disasters, incidents of assault, or other events when you feel your personal safety or the safety of others are in danger. Most people who experience traumatic stress are able to recover. However, some people might be at risk for developing post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD is a severe anxiety disorder that develops after experiencing an extremely stressful event such as war, physical violence, or a natural disaster. Hypervigilance is a symptom of PTSD. So just remember that. Where PTSD is the severe anxiety disorder, and then the symptom is hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is a sense of always being on guard and can keep you from disengaging from stressful situations. Other symptoms of PTSD include irritable or aggressive behavior, reckless or self-destructive behavior, problems with concentration, difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, or experiencing restless sleep. Behavioral health. Ways to maintain a healthy lifestyle include regular physical exercise, sufficient sleep each day, a diet low in fat, sugar, caffeine, alcohol, and smoking, a diet rich in vegetables, fruit, and water. Resilience is the capacity to effectively cope with stress, trauma, and other serious problems. Make sure you know what the EAP is. Your agency will have an employee assistant program. The EAP at your agency can be a good first step to access a number of resources. There are also many outside resources such as Alcoholics Anonymous, Crisis Text Line, Narcotics Anonymous, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Many organizations and resources exist solely to help law enforcement officers. A few examples are Badge of Life, Blue Help, HEART, Safe Call Now, Center for Officer Safety and Wellness. Career longevity. Vicarious trauma occurs when a person is exposed to the trauma of others and develops physical or mental impacts. Remember, vicarious trauma is basically secondhand trauma. Compassion fatigue is the emotional exhaustion that comes from helping others on a long-term basis. Symptoms of compassion fatigue include irritation, withdrawal from social situations, and feeling emotionally drained. Stigma is the belittling and disapproval of people because of certain characteristics they have. In law enforcement, this can consist of officers making jokes or perpetuating stereotypes that can prevent people from getting professional help. Statements such as, just deal with it, or you need to be tougher, foster this type of stigma. Focus on building your professional resilience and taking care of yourself. And that is the end of Chapter 1.